Welcome to Garden Chatter, where we connect gardeners, bloggers, and experts. Today we have a couple great guests. We're going to be talking about conifers. And so if you are joining this event live and you'd like to make a question or a comment, maybe learn something about conifers, you can look in the top. Once you join, you can look at the top right corner, and there's a little grid up there. You can tap that, and you should see a question and answer option. So it'd be great if we got some questions. And let's go ahead and get started. Bren, my co-host Bren Haas is here with us. Bren, how you doing tonight?
Very good. And I am the luckiest girl in the garden world. I am here with three awesome gentlemen. We've got Bill Blevins from plantsmap.com and Ronald Elardo, I always say that wrong, I'm used to your Twitter name, who is the editor of the Conifer Quarterly publication. And I'll let you gentlemen go ahead and introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your website or what you're up to.
Okay, Bill, why don't you go first?
I have my Conifer Quarterly.
Oh, good.
I read it religiously. It took me a long time to connect the fact that your Twitter handle was the editor of this, and I'm very honored to be asked to chat tonight, and you're the other guest. So here is. And how I got into conifers. We've moved from Virginia to Alabama to New York and back to Virginia, and then all of those places have had pretty significant gardens. And I pretty much hauled the mulch and was the hole digger for Tracy, who's a master gardener and has been a master gardener for years. And I used to try to annoy her by going to plant sales and the events that she would go to, and I would, while she was looking for plants, I would hunt for frogs, and normally it was some sort of tchotchke or something statuary of a frog that would just tick her off when she saw it out in the garden. And that was my hobby, one of my hobbies. But in 2004 or 5, we were in Alabama, and she got a Metasequoia glyptostrobus from the botanical garden there in Birmingham, Alabama. It was about 6 inches tall. We put it in a pot, and when I moved to New York, I took the pot with me to New York, and the thing started growing. And this was 2006, and it was the most prolific plant in a pot I've ever seen in my life. And we moved again in New York, and I stuck it in the ground, and it was the most amazing tree. And I would just go out in the yard and admire this Dawn redwood, and just fascinated by it. And about that time, she got involved with the Rochester Perennial Society and met Jerry Kroll, a pretty well-known figure in the conifer world, and Ronald, you know him. And I was just amazed at his stories about all these different conifers, and I started watching that space. And when we moved to Virginia, I said, I want to collect conifers. So all these years I've been collecting frogs has turned into now an obsession with weird and unusual conifers. So I think in 2012 I planted 141, or I number all my plants, so I have 141 numbers. There's actually more plants than that. And this year I'm stuck at 99. So have quite a few conifers, and have a million questions for Ron.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, I've always had plants, and used to have a lot of house plants. And then I met some people at Hidden Lake Gardens, and they asked me to volunteer. And then I wandered into the Harper collection, and that's when the addicted conifer syndrome, which Bill clearly has, took hold. And I remember when we moved to the home we live in now, my son and I dragged some trees with us, and the root balls fell apart, and I knew zero. And we planted this one sculpted Scots pine, which is now enormous. After the introduction to the Harper collection at Hidden Lake Gardens, I began to go to meetings of the Conifer Society. I joined, and I won some trees at auctions, and we planted those. And that sort of got me off and running. And then when I realized that space was going to be a challenge, I began to put them in decorative containers. Now, Brenda has seen some of these, and I've put them also up on Twitter. So we now have well over 150 conifers here on the property. And I'm not a horticulturist. I am a master gardener. I'm not a horticulturist. I just have a love for them, and it's become an avocation. So here in Adrian, Michigan, not far from Hidden Lake Gardens, is my own little arboretum.
That sounds great. You know, I'm thinking it could be contagious. What do you think, Bren? Are we going to get the conifer bug?
You will. They're beautiful, and they're pretty simple to grow, I would say. I mean, I've got a few in my collection after being inspired by Ronald in a few conifer gardens here in Ohio and the Michigan area. And yeah, and you live in a great location, Adam. Adam, you're zone 8 up in Oregon?
Yeah, 8A. Yeah, and of course we have conifers all around.
Yeah.
Not so much right down in the valley, though. Just kind of hot for them.
Oregon is the motherland of conifers. Once you get over the Cascades, there are all kinds of wonderful nurseries there that grow the conifers, and then we get them here in the rest of the country.
Yeah, got to get out and explore. Well, I wonder if with Christmas coming up, some people might want to have a Christmas tree in a pot.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on that? How can we give some hints on?
It's become a popular thing to do. I know the old rule of thumb was dig a hole while the ground is not frozen, fill it with hay to keep it warmer and moister, and then plant the conifer from the container after Christmas. My only concern about doing that is that the tree won't get enough moisture once you put it in the ground. I think it has a better chance. Now, if you go and buy a Norfolk pine, the Araucaria heterophylla, like Brenda has behind her, that will do fine in the house. I actually have grown Colorado blue through the winter in the house, in a cool room where the monkey puzzle is now living. So I would say go ahead. If you want to get a container conifer now and use it as your Christmas tree, acclimate it into the house by putting it in the garage, as long as the garage is not heated. And then after maybe 2 or 3 days, bring it into the house. Make sure you keep it watered. And then after 2 weeks, you're going to, 2 weeks it's going to start to get too hot in the house for the tree. Then the idea is you acclimate it back out of the house into the garage, and then finally outside. Once you get it outside, I would water it until the root ball freezes. Once that happens, then you can put it in a non-south facing location away from the burning winds of and sun of winter, and see what happens. I've never been a fan of planting conifers after June or July. So this is a little bit of an experiment, but it's worth doing. Because I one Christmas time, bought a Colorado blue spruce at a local nursery because I felt bad for it. It was sitting there on a shelf. Christmas had passed. I brought it home. I put it in a decorative container. It lived in my plant room, and it made it.
I was thinking.
Now, of course,
go ahead, Brent.
Ron. Of course, Ron's talking to us northern gardeners when he's talking about the freezing and whatnot.
Right.
What hardiness zone do you think that would be, Ron? More, starting at like maybe where they freeze, like it would be like zone. What do you think? Like 5 to
5 to 6.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill could probably do it just fine in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And to the south, in southeastern Michigan, that's not south, pardon me, in the southeastern United States, or in the western states, below the freeze belts, the trees would then be able to go in the ground. They would be just fine.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I'm ever going to get the root ball to freeze.
No.
Unless we have a exceptionally cold snap.
Right.
And it's also a really good time right now at the garden centers. I'm noticing there's still a lot of conifers that are left over from last year. And a few years ago, Ronald had given me a beautiful the thunderhead. Is that what I don't know the botanical name.
Thunbergiana, Pinus thunbergiana, thunderhead.
It's beautiful. And now that conifer was a good, boy, I want to say 3.5 feet tall in the container, and I wintered it over outside. I put leaves and mulch around it up against my little shed by the greenhouse, but it got all the elements, and I just made sure that it got pretty much the same treatment a conifer would get out in the landscape, and it survived, and it's doing beautiful. 2 years ago, I think now, right?
That's wonderful. It is 2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
My thunderhead in the ground burned completely.
Oh,
last winter.
Year.
It reached it's about 7 feet, and terribly, it burned, and I destroyed it.
Every comment that each of you makes, I have a couple of questions. I'll go backwards and start with the burning. I bought a Pinus densiflora. It was called Golden Ghost. I think I might have actually emailed you about this a while ago. It got severely burned last winter, and it has started to come back. And I realize it's only 2.5 feet tall, and it's got a lot of time to grow. But how do you decide, or do you even decide to do things to protect those trees as a preventative measure, like spray a desiccant on them, or, I mean, do you do that at all, Ron?
The first year, I have 2 gold ghosts. Brenda has pictures of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the first year, I wrapped it in burlap. Or not, I didn't wrap it. I created a screen around it with wooden poles and burlap, and it burned. So I didn't do that the next year. Well, the tree came back, and then it burned again without the protection, but the tree came back. And then last winter, both of them burned, but then when the warmth of spring came around, they shot up these enormous candles, and the needles all came out. So
when you say it came back, did it come back true to the Golden Ghost, or did it have some variegation in it, like a dragon eye? Or mine was pure yellow or almost white.
Okay.
And then when it came back, it looks more like the dragon's eye now with those stripes, or Zabrina.
That's correct. Mine came back with stripes.
Huh. The other question to the Thunderhead, I bought one, and it's probably one of my favorite conifers, but it was labeled Thunder Cloud, and I was swearing to everybody that I had a Thunder Cloud, and I know now that I was wrong. But how do you find out what you have if the label was wrong?
Well, fortunately, I have my own little library of the latest research. One of them being the Encyclopedia of Conifers by the Royal Horticultural Society. And so
my Christmas list.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you need to talk to me about that because I could get you a very good price on it.
Tracy?
If you buy it overseas, it's going to cost you about $400. Or anyway, I consult. Yeah, I consult those. You know, Thunderhead should be fine where you are. I'm not aware of a tree called Thunder Cloud. A lot of times the nurseries will put a label on things that, and they're mislabeled. Or it's a trade name and it's not the acceptable name. But my suspicion is, I haven't seen yours, but my suspicion is it has these exquisitely long needles and it almost looks like, they almost look like these great big tubes, the branches. Is that what it looks like, Bill? Yeah, I suspect that it is indeed Thunbergiana Thunderhead. For your zone, it's good, but you see, for my zone in 5, it's marginal. So I would say zone 6, 7, 8, you're going to be fine with the Thunderhead.
It's an amazing tree.
Yeah, I'm happy that Brenda brought hers through, you know, through the winter, because I lost mine and it had been in the ground 5 years.
Oh.
Do people on that particular tree? Do people? I don't know what the word is, but like prune it for shape. I've left mine just totally natural and it's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like it would lend itself to some interesting pruning.
Yeah, I think you could, you know, if you wanted to do the Milwaukee thing where you're essentially creating a bonsai in the ground, you could do that very nicely with Thunderhead. I left mine natural too. I just think the tree was just such a beautiful, beautiful tree, and it killed me when it burned.
So you and I had a discussion, I guess back in August, about Uncle Fogey.
Oh yes.
And mine was almost, I didn't notice that this was happening, but the sawflies had a nice picnic. And I ended up actually spraying it with something, but how does that happen in your area?
I had sawfly destroy a beautiful Serbian spruce. They're hard to defeat. It's one of the things that
you have to be there that day.
Yeah, I mean when I finally found what was going on, it was too late. A friend and I treated the tree. It's a very potent systemic insecticide that you have to mask and glove to use. But it didn't save the tree. The tree was lost.
Now, can you guys explain just a little bit what type of tree this is? And I'm not familiar with sawflies. I don't know if we don't have them here or I just don't know. So maybe you could just explain a little bit about them.
I can't think of the botanical offhand because I always refer to it as my Uncle Fogey. They
Uncle
are
Toby.
they're wonderful trees. They like to grow horizontally. Um, they're really uncontrollable unless you want to prune them. And for the life of me, I can't think of the botanical name offhand. Some people call it Uncle Foggy, but that's wrong. It's Fogy, which is fogey. Um,
Pinus banksiana.
Pinus, that's it. There you go, Bill. Thank you for that rescue. Pinus banksiana.
I looked on my website.
Oh, well, that's fine. My encyclopedia is in the other room with the monkey puzzle, so.
You need to put your plants on a plants map.
I know.
Right. I was just gonna say that's the really cool thing about social media and websites. I am the queen of getting botanical names wrong and plants wrong, and I know I can tweet it. And I have great people like you who, like Ronald, he'll tweet it right out and say, no, that's the, and I appreciate that. And then also plants maps, awesome. I used that the other day looking up a plant. Just typed it in the search bar on your site, and a bunch of information came up from gardeners from all around. So we're really lucky.
Yeah, it's like having a database.
Yeah,
it is a database.
Totally.
Yeah.
Is the sawflies that they attack, I think, what's called jack pines. So it encompasses quite a few plants. I have a Pinus contorta spans dwarf, or is it spans or spans dwarf?
Either.
It's similar, but I had sawflies on that as well. I caught that one pretty quick. I don't really know what they turn into, but they look like little green caterpillars.
Yes, right. And they're teeny tiny.
Hundreds of them.
Yes.
Are they
Yeah.
kind of
The
like?
weird-
Are they kind of like the aphids, like a white, those, like the little white flies,
No, they're
like
green.
aphids?
They're green, yeah.
Oh, same
And
size.
when you go up to them on a conifer, they stop motionless, so all their heads are pointed up, and they almost look like needles of a conifer
Right.
until they start moving. So you really have to look for them, but they're usually hundreds.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
And
Adam,
they're hard to defeat.
do you feel like they're talking Greek? I hope. I hope both of you will share, if you can, a picture on maybe your Google Plus page of the conifers and the fancy names you're talking about, so we can click over later and see. Okay, if you could, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd like to do a little summary post of some of the things and the ones you're mentioning, and maybe get some pictures to put in there. That'd be great. Well, I was wondering, what about? Go ahead, Bill.
I was gonna say I get kind of bored with the plants that I see at the normal Home Depots and Lowe's of the world. Although we shop there all the time, they have pretty common plants. But we did get Alberta spruce dwarfs or small plants last year and put them on the front porch, and then I overwintered them and put them in the garden, and they're doing great. We didn't do that this year, but I do like to shop the marked down plants when they clear out for Christmas, because there are a lot of conifers over in that section. So if you're trying to fill up space, that's a good time to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
What are some of the things people should be thinking about when they go to buy some conifers? I mean, just maybe some guidelines of things they should, kind of a checklist of, I know there's like hardiness zone, but anything else?
I want to go back to where Brenda was right at the beginning of our chatter, and that's Conifers, despite things like needle miner and sawfly and what, they're usually relatively pest resistant. They're resilient. They're fairly easy to take care of. Once you get them in the ground, if you water them in correctly, their first planting season, and some of my friends do plant into October, like Ethan Johnson at Holden Arboretum, Dennis Grow here in Michigan. They plant right into the fall, and the fall rains actually help the tree. So the conifers are relatively easy. They don't require a lot of pruning or primping unless it's your desire to do that. So I kind of wanted to throw that in. That's one of the things I enjoy about them. Once I've got them through that first season, they're really off and running on their own.
Well, Ronald, when would be the best time to plant them?
I like to plant in June. Now, if I were in Georgia, I'd probably be planting in April.
Yeah, I'm thinking for me that wouldn't necessarily be the best time in June, just because then we're going to have a blazing hot summer, and
exactly.
Probably better in like February for us, or maybe
right,
in the fall even.
You plant traditionally. I know a friend of mine in Petaluma, the web editor of the American Conifer Society website. She plants now. She just finished massive planting at her home. Because yes, Oregon, once you're hitting July and August, and even September, it's pretty hot. So
I agree with Ron. For the most part, 95% of my conifers are doing great. And you go look at a maple tree and you expect it to start to bud in the spring, and it's going to get leaves, and then it's going to get the seeds with the little helicopter, and then the helicopter's going to fall off, then the leaves are going to turn color, and then the leaves are going to fall off. And that's a maple tree. With the conifer, there's something to look at every single time you go and look at that plant. And there's so much variety. It can take an hour to walk around the yard just because there's so much to look at. And they change continuously. I'm just fascinated by them. And I think, my preference is to look for the ones that you don't find normally. So I've passed a lot of conifers that I would have bought 2 years ago, looking for that one that's really special. So there's some really interesting things out there right now, and the Conifer Society is awesome, and just put out their Conifers of the Year for 2015. So if you're a member of the American Conifer Society, you can buy some special plants that they picked out. Right, it was in that magazine.
The new one. You got the new one, didn't you?
They're usually varieties that are not going to be in the mass market for maybe 10 years. So it's really I'm getting Herman. I don't remember the botanical name, but
it's a Sembra.
Yeah.
Sembras are very nice.
I might get another one for Christmas, but.
Are you
now.
Your wife is going to tell you no.
So now I've personally gone shopping for conifers with Ronald, and there's some really cool garden centers that specialize in conifers. What I want to ask you is, before one of our listeners purchases a conifer, what do you think they should be looking for?
Well, go ahead, Bill.
I'm looking for the unusual and something that's not every day, but one of the things that I always look at when I'm debating a plant is the 10-year size, and because I'm trying to think of where it'll work in the garden. Do I have a place? I mean, right now I have a pretty open landscape, but what's it going to be in 10 years, and how's it going to work with other plants? So I think that you need to be aware that the 10-year size is, what you're going to look up in a book, but this thing could grow significantly bigger in 20 years. One consideration.
Yeah, if it's listed as dwarf, it can be 25 to 30 feet tall at maturity. So
Sure.
and it could be, once again, depending, if it's a columnar shape, it's not going to have a very great breadth. But if it's like an Alaska cedar, the Cupressus nucatensis, can grow to be 30, 35 feet, and it can be easily almost that wide. So you don't want to stick it in the corner of your front deck because the tree will consume a lot of space.
Right.
So yes, you need to look at the zone. You need to look at the lighting. There are conifers that will do okay in dappled sunlight and in shade, but basically they are full sun plants. So you want to give them that. A question has come up from Maggie Towson about the best time to prune. I'll start with the fact that I don't prune. I prune out the dead stuff, the older branches down at the bottom that have lost all their needles or leaves. We use that interchangeably in the Conifer Society. But I would say if you want to prune, you would prune in March.
Okay.
If I had to peg you on maybe one or two varieties that kind of have the most unique or best color, what would you come up with? Maybe something that's available, fairly available, not on special order and
Right. Well, I mean, one of my favorites, and I have two buttes, and I know that Brenda has pictures of them. They are yellow, 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 yellow. There's no variegation. It came through the awful winter of last year with no problem, and it has a delightful name. Chamaecyparis piscifera folifera aurea. It's a its common name is threadleaf yellow cypress, but it's got that cute name that I just always love to say because it's sort of like a tongue twister. Conifers, Conifera, Folifera, aurea.
I actually did a video of you saying that it's a vine, and I was really amazed that you fit that long name in 6 seconds. Do you remember that?
Oh yes, right.
I'll tweet that out.
The yellow. I like very much the dragon's eyes with the variegated needles because they're white, they're yellow, they're pale green, they're dark green, all in one needle. It's a very beautiful tree, and then the candles are almost a blood red.
Ginkgo called American.
Yes.
You're breaking.
We good?
Well, you're breaking up just a little bit there, Bill.
Yeah. Yeah, ginkgos, which I do include as conifers, but they actually have their own family, and a lot of people are starting to not include them as conifers, but I do. Yeah, American. That's the one, Bill. That's white striped.
It's very golden in the fall. Very, very. It's totally green and turns golden early, and stays golden for a long time.
Right. Right.
I planted a Chamaecyparis obtusa cheerman right by the front door, and everybody that walks up the sidewalk has to touch it.
Yeah.
it's a really fascinating plant, and it's becoming pretty available. If you pass that one in a store, buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And one other that's next to it in the same bed is Abies Push.
Push.
I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yes, that's right.
And it has awesome cones. And very interesting.
Another.
I want
is
to. Oh, go ahead, Ron. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say as Bill mentioned, the different colors and sights of the conifers through the seasons. The spring is always delightful because no matter what part of the country you're in, when your conifers, when their candles strike, and the cones begin to form, you see these beautiful colors. Some of them are purple, some of them are black, some of them are strawberry red, some of them are yellow and white, and it's really quite delightful in the budding season to see those growths on the conifers.
I just wanted to do a quick little shout out about, we're talking about all these fancy different conifers through the different societies and whatnot, and even the garden centers. But you can also find some beautiful conifers that are a sure success in your garden at your local soil and water conservation district. I know here in Wood County, Ohio, in fact, right now behind my greenhouse, I've blogged about my little conifer farm. I have about, I think there's 250 of these arborvitaes we started, and they literally were little twigs like this, and now they're 4 feet tall in like 2 years. So if you have a space that you need to fill, it's a great place. I think we spent $50 on these, and I'm talking like 300 some trees. And your local soil and water district, they're going to have the varieties that are going to work best in your hardiness zone, right?
Yep. And there are nurseries like Bison Nursery, Conifer World. You can look up conifer online, and you can actually mail order them from people in Oregon. And trees come to you, and then you're off and running. Brenda also clearly has a conifer addiction. I mean, how many trees?
A lot.
A lot. And arborvitae are fun. Arborvitae are fun.
And you know what, that price...
One of the trees here in Virginia that is getting a lot of discussion is the long needle or longleaf pine, and
yes.
I planted 2 of them, and they're just amazing how they grow, but the needles have to be 12 to 15 inches long, and they were apparently the most common tree on the East Coast from Virginia south back years ago, and they almost went extinct, and there's an effort to revitalize them. Another tree to look out for if it'll grow in your zone.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I have this little guy right here.
They need forest fire to propagate.
So I have a question. First of all, what is this little guy?
The juniper.
And then sort of my next question is, I probably should get it in the ground. I was kind of hoping to keep it in a pot. But it's getting, I don't know if this is just like fall. It's hard to see maybe, but it's getting a little bit yellow, brown.
Oh.
Pinus,
not looking so good. So
Pinus blurry.
Pinus blurry. It looks like a juniper to me.
Yeah, it does look a bit like that. Well, I lost the label and I hadn't written down what it was, so now I'm like,
It needs to go in the ground, Adam.
Yeah, I think it needs to go in the ground. It's not happy. It was in a 1-gallon. I potted it up into a 2-gallon some months ago, but it's looking a little sad.
And
So,
give it some food.
yeah,
Give it some
we'll get it in the
osmocote.
ground. It's my daughter's tree, so we need to make sure it lives.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It'd be sad.
Don't
Definitely.
overwater it.
Don't overwater it. And
Don't overwater it.
Can
Yeah.
I, can I ask?
It's tricky.
Can I ask Ron another question?
Of course.
While
ahead.
I have him, fertilizing conifers. What do you do?
I use osmocote. That's how I fertilize. I also use
And
hollytone, but not together.
Yeah.
I will fertilize the conifers in May so that they get a boost. Now, what I also did was and this is a bit of an experiment, so I'll have to wait. We'll have to wait till the spring. But I gave my conifers this summer also hollytone, which increases their ability to absorb moisture.
Huh. I experimented with the manure tea this year. I'll have to. It's a fascinating idea. I can't tell if I'm doing too much or too little, but we'll see how things go.
Okay. Yeah, because see now Annie would kill me, but I haven't because I haven't used the manure tea. But I've used the osmocote, and it's pretty easy to measure out.
Yeah.
It's just we use a lot of it. I mean, on a 25-foot conifer, I'm going to use a lot of osmocote.
I'm not familiar with what that is, but I will tell you the conifers you've given me, Ron, they've all survived except for I did lose that Spanish fern, I think it was, that you gave me last year.
Yes.
Unfortunately. I don't know if it was the zone. It was a 6 perhaps, maybe. And I cried. I'm sorry. I failed on you.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. Both of mine died. Remember those nice ones?
Yeah.
I had both of them died as a result of last winter. They're marginal to our zone.
Okay.
Bill would be better having them. Certainly Adam would be better having them than you or I.
So I've got quite a few nice ones that you've given me that I have no clue what their name is, but that's okay. And I've got hundreds like bald cypress I like to plant throughout our woodlands here in Ohio. And I'll tell you, when I plant them, all I have done is mixed about half of my manure from the horses next door that have sat for about 6 months or so. You know, it's broken down and you never put fresh on there. I mix that in with the soil and I mulch it, and they're doing beautiful. That's all I do. So whatever's in that.
Yeah, a lot of times, in the past I've lost conifers because I amended. I'm in clay. Mm-hmm. So I went and dug the hole and amended. Mm-hmm. And in clay, it was a disaster. I lost some very expensive trees because they rooted out in the amendment, and then they hit the clay and essentially died. So now I dig a hole about the size of the root ball, not twice the size of the root ball, but the size of the root ball, and stick them in. I always like to have it a little mounded on the top. I never plant below the ground level or below the level of the top of the root ball because conifers don't like to sit in water. So you always want to have a little mound at the top, where the top of the root ball is. That should be showing.
Yeah, every larix that I've planted has not been planted high enough, and when it eventually died and I pulled it out, the hole had water in it.
Right.
So I'm going to do the trench next time.
Right, because if you just dig a big wide hole in your clay, you're just making a little swimming pool.
Exactly.
And it's just going
Right.
to fill up.
Right.
Exactly. And even I guess I'm going to tell tales out of school, but oh well. I donated several trees to Hidden Lake Gardens, and they died because they were planted too deep. If you can imagine.
Hmm.
That's good to know, because I might be planting a little conifer here very quickly, very soon.
Yeah, because the other thing too is that when you put it in a hole and you start to water it, it's going to sink also. So I always like to put it like an inch or two above. So and then if you mulch it, don't mulch, of course, up to the trunk because you don't want the moisture to be held to the trunk. I have to say something else too, and this makes me sound like a bad guy, I guess, with the nursery industry, but you have to be careful these days when you
Never
get.
stop me.
Okay, well, you have to be careful when you get a tree that's been balled and burlapped, because many times the top of the root ball is buried, and so when you pull away that burlap, you've got to make sure that you gently remove the dirt, and it's usually clay that they pack them in to ship away from the top of the root ball. I've also run into two things that have annoyed me tremendously, and one is collapsing root balls, where you'll get the plant and all of a sudden you'll be moving it or something to put it in the ground and the root ball will collapse. So now you've got a bare-rooted plant. And in that case, I would say wash the roots off, wash everything off, and then put it in the ground. I've also noticed, and I think this is a problem in the industry, and I've made this known to the people I know, sometimes these trees are also being cut or dug, and the main roots are being dug, and secondary roots that were growing on the main roots are no longer there. So you've essentially bought a dead plant. So you have to be careful with that. And if you ever get a tree, there is a question, yes.
I think you have more snow than me.
Yeah, it says from Maggie Towson again, if you haven't already covered this, what's the best way to de-snow conifers to save branches from breaking under weight?
Not at all. If the tree conifers were made to live, at least those in the 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, they were made to live where they naturally grow. I would not do it. The chances that you'll break a branch are better than if the tree had to suffer through the snow. I do know that arborvitae many times will splay open. Ice and snow will do that. I think
I had a situation last winter where with all that snow we got, and at one point we had a good 7 feet of snow piled up here in Ohio, and one of the boys, when they were clearing with the plow, they dumped a big bucket on my little, I don't know the fancy name for it, but it's basically one of those tree, blue spruce pine trees, and it broke a bunch of the branches off, and I about cried when I saw it. But once June came, it actually was, it pruned it. The thing just filled in even fuller. So it's fun how nature works,
That does happen. I know that people in the East many times are beset by ice storms and then heavy wet snow, which is tough on the fastigiate forms, the forms that grow up columnar forms. But I'm one of those people that likes the tree to face up to the nature in which it lives. So I tend to leave them alone.
Well, I know we're running close on time here, but I wanted to touch base just really quick, if we could, about this Norfolk Island pine I have behind me, because this is the season where a
Yep.
lot of our garden centers have this. Would this be considered a tropical conifer? Is that what that's called?
Yes.
Okay, because I've seen them in Miami, um,
Yes.
30 feet plus tall, just amazing. Do you
Right.
have any tips on possibly how, if someone were to get one of these in their home, how could we grow it successfully?
Put it in a bright spot.
Mhm.
Definitely keep it away from heating vents. In a cool room would be nice. Cool room. And don't overwater, but get one of those little meters that tells you if the soil is moist or dry. Don't let it dry out. Remember, this is a tree that doesn't belong here. They're cute. They're like the poor little bunny rabbits that get sold at Easter. You know, they're cute,
Yeah.
but then what do you do with the rabbit? I have not, I'll be honest with you, I have not successfully kept Norfolk Island pine. But then I didn't discover how well I can shut off the heating vents where the monkey puzzle is.
Right.
I'm thinking I should carry my laptop in there so you can actually see it. I don't want to see it, but
How about you share a picture with us?
I'll send,
Go ahead
yeah,
and share a picture with us on your G Plus account,
yeah,
and we'll be sure. I'll definitely tweet it.
yeah, I'll send pictures of it, and also I'm growing another one called uh, Willemia nobilis, Willemia pine. It's not really a pine, but it is a conifer.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you guys joining us tonight. It's really
What
fun
did you
to
learn?
learn.
What's that, Bill?
What did Adam learn?
Well, let's see. I don't know if I want to do the whole wrap up right now, but I definitely learned a few species I want to check out, and so I'll be looking for pictures and trying to make sure I can get the names right. And then also I'm knowing about planting in my clay and keeping it high so it doesn't get bogged down in there and get waterlogged. So just a couple things that I took out of this. So I'll have to listen again
Fun.
and see what else I can pull out.
Right. And so Adam and I would like to thank you, Bill and Ronald, for sharing with us today about the wonderful world of conifers. And I would like to invite our audience who's watching today to feel free to click, if you're watching this on the Google Hangout, you can click on Ronald's face or Bill's face and follow them on Google. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll have to put a link at the bottom to a site where you can go in and you can follow these gentlemen today. And be sure to follow us for upcoming garden chats.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks,
I feel
Thanks,
honored to ask.
All right, thank you. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it with that.